Hello everyone, thanks for joining us on this webinar today, where we're going to talk about the Amazon VAT changes for UK and EU seller and FBA fees that came in on the 1st of August. I'm delighted to have with us on this call Steve and Oliver from Elver e-commerce. They are some of our most experienced UK accounting partners here at A2X, and they have an in-depth knowledge of both EU and UK VAT requirements and a wealth of experience supporting e-commerce businesses. My name is Elspeth, and I'm your host for today. I'm the UK Go-to-Market Manager here at A2X. I'm going to hand you over now to Steve and Oliver, and they're going to tell us a little bit about what they do at Elver's.
Okay, thank you, Elspeth. My name's Steve, Director at Elver e-commerce, and as Elspeth said, we specialise in assisting small and medium-sized e-commerce businesses with their accounting and tax requirements. And our vision is for every e-commerce business in the UK to be armed with precise financials and insights, empowering them to run successful, growth-orientated operations. And of course, one of the key elements to providing those up-to-date and accurate financials is using A2X.
Thanks, Steve. So today, the agenda for this webinar is going to be in 4 different parts. The first is, what are the changes to Amazon's VAT treatment for fees? How do these changes impact sellers in the UK and the EU? Important notes about FBA fees, credit notes, and other marketplaces. So things we're seeing as we've seen the data come in for August, and then how to manage the changes using A2X. So the first thing that we'd like to talk about is just what are these changes that have happened since the 1st of August for Amazon? And I'm going to hand this over to Steve just to tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay, so there's 3 key elements to the changes, which all happened on the 1st of August. But basically, Amazon started charging domestic VAT on selling and FBA fees based on the country of establishment of the seller. So for a UK company, that means that UK VAT is being charged on their selling and FBA fees, broadly speaking, across the whole of the EU. This means that as a result of paying VAT on the fees throughout the quarter, the VAT can now be reclaimed on the UK VAT returns, whereas, of course, previously there was no VAT to reclaim because it was all subject to the reverse charge. The other important thing to note is that there's actually no change to the way that advertising fees are being treated. So advertising on amazon.co.uk was and still is subject to 20% UK VAT, and advertising in anywhere else in the EU to a UK business was and still is based on the reverse charge mechanism. Okay. Right, so I'll now hand over to Oliver, who will talk through the impact of these changes.
So there's 3 main ways in which Amazon sellers might be impacted by these changes: cash flow, profitability, and VAT registration. So cash flow will be impacted for all sellers, whereas it's primarily smaller sellers that might be impacted in terms of profitability and VAT registration. So cash flow will be impacted because sellers will be incurring UK VAT on the selling and FBA fees on their settlements, so that the settlement values will be reduced by that VAT. So the settlement values will be smaller as a result, but then there'll be more VAT to reclaim on the subsequent VAT returns. So at any point in time, there could be effectively 20% of the value of your selling and FBA fees for a 4-month period out of the bank that would have otherwise been there in your bank account, not being deducted from the settlements. In terms of profitability, if you're using the VAT flat rate scheme currently, it may put you in a position where it's no longer the most cost-effective thing to do to be in that flat rate scheme, because you won't be able to reclaim the VAT you'll now be incurring on the FBA and selling fees. So it might just flip the balance between whether the standard scheme might be the better option for you. Also, for startups that haven't yet registered for VAT, they'll have higher operating costs because they'll be incurring that VAT on the FBA and selling fees, but won't have the ability to reclaim that VAT like VAT registered businesses. But then a plus point for non-VAT registered sellers is that these changes will actually push back the point at which you reach the VAT registration threshold. So you'll be able to sell more before you have to register. Previously, those fees were subject to the reverse charge mechanism and therefore counted towards the VAT registration threshold. Now that they're subject to UK VAT, that's no longer the case.
Thanks, Oliver. There's a few other things we want to note about the changes that we've just seen as we've seen the actual documents start to filter through the Amazon tax document library since the 1st of August. Initially, it did appear that all Amazon FBA fees across the EU and UK would be subject to 20% VAT for UK sellers. However, after we've spent some time reviewing the invoices across multiple accounts and reviewing the raw data, we've actually noticed that there's more nuances going on in terms of the tax treatment. For example, we're seeing that merchant seller fee invoices generally have 20% across most marketplaces. There's one or two kind of edge case exceptions to this rule. The second thing we've seen is that FBA fees on UK accounts that sell into the EU and also through the UK, they're generally seeing 2 invoices for FBA fees. One is 0 rated and one has 20% VAT on expenses. We'll talk a bit more about that later on in the webinar. The other thing we've really noticed is additional credit notes and invoices that are backdated during the August 2024 period in Amazon. Steve, you might want to say a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so this relates to fees that were originally charged prior to 1st of August and were subject to the reverse charge mechanism. And if there's, for instance, been a return in August in relation to a pre-1st of August sale, and there's therefore been a refund of those fees, then in order to be consistent with the original charge of those fees prior to August, which was reverse charge, then those credit notes are also reverse charged. So you will see fees in August that are still subject to the reverse charge, but they should all be credit notes, and you can identify those in your Amazon VAT invoices. You'll see that there are still invoices or actually credit notes being raised on an LU VAT number.
That definitely aligns with what we've been seeing as well as we've been looking in different accounts. So I know a lot of you that are listening to this will already be using A2X to automate your Amazon accounting data. So we just wanted to cover off some of the things that we're going to be doing just to help support you through this transition, as we do recognise that there is some complexity to it. And it's quite a big change from what we had previously. So a few of the steps we've been taking, we've already updated our automation tax rules once, and we're going to be doing a new update soon. That was to reflect some of the changes that we already knew about from the 1st of August. And we've been jumping on calls with people. So anybody at the moment, if you're selling on Amazon, regardless of your plan level, you can book in a 30-minute VAT support call with our UK and EU team. They've got a lot of expertise in this. They've been seeing it in a lot of different accounts and supporting a lot of different customers. So they'll be able to help you get to a good place with your August and September numbers. The other thing we're doing is we're proactively monitoring the situation. We're using the data, analysing it, checking it back, cross-checking it continually so that we can identify particularly some of these edge cases so that we have really good treatment going forward now that it's become, increasingly more complex than it was. And we're going to try and provide you with regular updates. There'll be some emails going out and we're doing this webinar, but we'll also be updating some of our help videos as well, just to walk you through some of the processes in your particular accounting system. The update as of today is that basically, because there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach for August, we do think that there will be some manual work involved on your part to make sure that it is accurately accounted for, particularly with these credit notes that reflect an earlier tax treatment. So we've tried to come up with some processes that will help you with that. Our main goal is to make sure that your VAT is accurately accounted for in your accounting system, and if you ever have to go back and revisit what you've done, you can see that it did match with what was in Amazon at the time, even though it is a transition period in terms of tax treatment. So the particular thing that we've seen with the split in FBA fees is that there are some that are 20% for UK sellers and there are some that are 0%. What we're seeing, generally speaking, is that orders shipped from GB warehouses to GB customers have the 20% VAT rate applied to the FBA fees, and orders shipped from other locations to or from other locations are 0 rated. We're going to be rolling out some more updates soon that are going to help you even more with these splits. And as I said, you can book a call with our team, email us at contact@a2xaccounting.com if you need some support on this. So we've mentioned that what we have seen in August is that there are credit notes with different tax treatments because they refer to fees that happened before the August transition date. So a good example of this is an FBA fee from the 1st of July would be categorized as a reverse charge expense. So if there's a refund later, you may have a credit note that has that old tax treatment rather than the new tax treatment. There's a couple of ways to manage this change. The first, if you're comfortable doing manual journal entries, you may be an accountant or bookkeeper yourself, and you may be really comfortable doing that and feel that you can make an adjustment for the 0 rated FBA fees. That's a great way to go. And then the other option is we've developed a clearing account workaround method if you would feel more comfortable actually raising the bills separately in your accounting system. So I think Steve is using the journal method, and it'd be really interesting to hear how you're doing that, Steve.
Okay, we're identifying the value of the fees that have been credited during the month from the Amazon VAT invoices. As I said before, they're identifiable because the Amazon VAT number is an LU number as opposed to all the other invoices that are now invoiced on a GB VAT number. So basically, we just need to establish the total value of all those fees and then post a journal to debit whatever account you use for your selling fees or your FBA fees. That will be a debit at 20% VAT, and the opposite side of the entry will be to the same account, but that will be with a VAT treatment of reverse charge.
The assumption on that being that you would code all the FBA and selling fees to 20% VAT on expenses in the first instance, and that you're therefore taking those credit notes out of where you've posted them with that journal.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a really good route to go if you're confident when it comes to posting those kinds of manual journals to your accounting system. So as we've said already, because of the varied VAT treatment on transactions during the August period, we don't feel that at the moment there's a one-size-fits-all approach in terms of mapping your fees for the period. You may have some transactions in there that relate to the period prior to August 2024, and you may also be experiencing the split between domestic FBA fees and international FBA fees that we've also spoken about. So you can do the manual journal route, or the second option is to use our clearing account workaround method. Either of these approaches should allow you to get to the place where your accounting data is matching what is in the tax document library and that your VAT treatment matches to the invoices themselves. So I'm going to walk you really quickly just through what our suggested workaround is. don't worry about this. I've put the steps really simply. We've got a support article that's a bit more detailed. It walks you through with some screenshots. But the other option is to book in a 30-minute call with one of our team, and we'll help walk you through it to make sure it's right from beginning to end. So step one is that you create a special clearing account in Xero or QuickBooks or whichever accounting software you're using, which you're going to use to send your FBA and all your other fees for the period to. You need to ensure that payments to this account are enabled. That's for a later step where you're going to mark some bills paid. There's two different ways to do this. We've showed you here how to do it in QuickBooks and Xero, but as I say, our article will walk you through step by step. The second thing that you're going to do is you're going to isolate all of the fees that are already in the accounting system. So we're assuming you've already pushed all your A2X settlements through for August. And then you're going to recode the period and send all of your fees, so advertising fees, FBA fees, and seller fees, and you're going to post them to the clearing account. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to download all of your bills from the Amazon tax document library for August. And you're going to raise them in the accounting system as bills individually. You can use HubDoc or Dext or Apron, whatever you're using for that, if that's helpful and it speeds up the process for you. That's now going to give you a list of unpaid bills in your accounting system. You're going to mark these bills as paid to the clearing account. It's super simple to do that in Xero. It's just down at the bottom of the bill, gives you the option. As long as you've enabled payments to the clearing account, you should be able to do that in Xero. This will give you a paid bill. And there's an option in QuickBooks, I think it's a make payment option, then it gives you a drop down and you can select the clearing account. The last step is just to check the clearing account, check the credits and debits in the clearing account match with only immaterial differences. If they don't match, check for any missed bills in the Amazon tax document library. Okay, so that's how that's a couple of different workaround methods that you can use. You can do a manual journal to adjust for the VAT, or you can do the clearing account method. Now we're going to talk about the impact of these changes on cash flow, because that's a big topic for sellers who are now experiencing these changes in tax treatment. And I think Oliver is going to tell us a bit more about this.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, that for all sellers, cash flow will be impacted by these VAT changes. But there are a few things you can do to help mitigate the impact. Not all these solutions will be right for all sellers, but I'll talk through the three options we think are worth considering. So the first one is with regards to import VAT. So this will only be relevant to sellers that are importing their products into the UK. So there is the option to postpone that import VAT. You just need to ask your freight forwarder to do that and make sure they've got your EORI number to enable that postponement. The impact of that is that rather than paying for the import VAT at the point of import and reclaiming it on your VAT return, you instead postpone the VAT, so don't pay it at the point of import. And then on your VAT return, you would simultaneously pay it and reclaim it at the same time. So that import VAT never leaves your bank account. So potentially over the course of a VAT return quarter, you've got the opportunity to keep all your import VAT in the bank. Then the second option to consider is working capital solutions. So essentially looking at getting a loan in place to help smooth cash flow. There are VAT funding specific options available that would enable you to spread a VAT bill over 3 separate installments over a 3-month period. But if you are finding that that's something you expect to need to do every VAT quarter, then that's unlikely to be the most cost-effective option for you, and you're probably better off looking at longer-term funding with more cost-effective interest rates that will give you a bit more certainty over your cash flow rather than wanting to get into a VAT funding arrangement every quarter. But as a one-off, that can be a good solution just to ease the transition to this new process. And then the final thing to consider, and this will be more relevant to sellers that have their sales weighted towards overseas sales, is to switch to monthly returns if these changes put you in a position where you'll be getting a VAT refund from your VAT return rather than having a liability to pay. So if you are in a refund position, then HMRC will let you switch to monthly. And then it just means you can get your VAT refund back in the bank every month rather than letting that build up for a whole quarter.
That's a really good suggestion. Thanks, Oliver. Okay, so that's the end of the content that we have to share today. If you do have any questions, please email us afterwards. We'd love to talk to you. I do want to say a massive thank you to Oliver and Steve for sharing their expertise. We really recommend Elver e-commerce. If you're a seller and you need a good e-commerce accountant, or you've got VAT questions, you can reach out to them at elverecommerceaccountant.co.uk. And there's a big, I think it's an orange button on their website that you can click to get in touch with them. With A2X, if you've got any questions around A2X, please send us an email at contact@a2xaccounting.com and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. And we'd love to talk to you about automating your e-commerce accounting. So Oliver and Steve, thank you again. Really appreciate it. I think people are going to find this super helpful because there's so many questions out there on the internet about this topic right now. We really appreciate your time today. Thank you very much and have a great rest of the day, everyone.